Welcome to The Hypnotist, the show that gives you inside access to cutting-edge hypnosis with real clients facing genuine issues. Brought to you by the hypnotherapist demanded by celebrities, CEOs, and even royalty, Adam Cox. These recordings took place live from Adam's clinic in London's world-famous Harley Street. This podcast features powerful hypnosis, so do not listen while driving or operating machinery. This recording is not suitable for those with epilepsy or severe mental health issues. So, get yourself comfortable and enjoy today's episode of The Hypnotist.
Hi, it's Adam here, and in this episode of The Hypnotist, you're going to be listening to a hypnosis session that was created for a client that had very high levels of anxiety, particularly if they made the evaluation that they were vulnerable or alone, or just in unfamiliar surroundings. There was this kind of feeling of hypervigilance and kind of real vulnerability. And a bit of that is actually useful. You know, if you have this element of almost recklessness or disregard for any possible threats or dangers, that actually increases the risk of something bad happening. But equally, at the other end of the spectrum, if you are hypervigilant and very stressed and anxious and almost assume that something bad's going to happen, that's also not very conducive, because it's going to affect sleep, it's going to affect adrenaline, cortisol levels. Generally not a good feeling to kind of have such high levels of anxiety. So what you're going to hear is an element of stage disassociation, so kind of tapping into a beach holiday that they could recall. For them, they enjoyed reading while they were on the beach. So that gave me a way to create a nested loop of two levels of disassociation. So from reality to a beach, and then within a story. So there's a level of disassociation which is quite good for inducing a trance state. I define trance as most of your focused attention is on an internal representation of senses. So imagining what you're seeing, hearing, experiencing, that kind of thing, rather than reality. So the direct suggestions are based on this idea that the character in the story, not themselves, although the attributes relate to them, is someone that would assume that the worst things possible could happen, will happen, even if they never happen. And that was important because you get much more objectivity when you imagine yourself through the eyes of someone else, if that makes sense. It's kind of like, well, why would that make sense? There's also a reference to kind of some of the fears of, let's say, earlier civilizations, the fear of dragons or the fear of kind of entities or bad spirits or evil gods. The dragon is the main one because it becomes something that at our current point in time and history, we would say, yeah, but the dragons were never real. But imagine a time in mythology where there is no way to kind of verify and these stories can take hold. You could imagine that there was a time that people felt real fear based on imaginary dragons. And that's not dissimilar for someone feeling real fear based on the possibility of something that has never happened at all and is very low probability of happening. So it's possible for us to have real anxiety based on very low probability items. And that's really what this session is all about, this idea of assuming that good things will happen and only getting anxious if there's sufficient evidence to feel anxiety, rather than being in a constant state of anxiety and then figuring out that you didn't need that anxiety to begin with. So if you have high levels of anxiety, I think you'll benefit from this session. But obviously it was created for a specific individual with individual circumstances. So if you feel like a bespoke session may be useful for you, there will be a link in the show notes where you can schedule a completely free 30-minute consultation call to explore working with me directly. For now, though, find a quiet, comfortable place, ideally where you won't be disturbed, relax, and enjoy the session. Take a deep breath in. As you breathe in a resourceful feeling of calm and relaxation. That's it. As you exhale, feel the wonderful feeling of release. As any tension, anxiety or stress or worries feels like it's detaching. Feel like it's melting away. And feel like as you breathe out, that stress or anxiety is leaving your body in your outward breath. If you're breathing out anxiety, imagine that you're breathing in something resourceful. That could be confidence. It could be an evaluation that you are able to cope. Your life is evidence that you can deal with difficult things. You can manage situations. You take things as they come. So breathe in that resourceful feeling and exhale. And as you do so, use the power of your imagination to imagine that you're floating up outside of your body. See yourself sitting there exactly as you are. Keep your physical body where it is and allow your imagination to go on a journey. Imagine how it would feel to float up into the sky like a superhero. Just imagine how it would feel to fly in between clouds over oceans. And I want you to picture in your mind's eye a quiet, picturesque beach in Mexico. Just imagine, because it is your imagination, making your way through the skies towards a beach in Mexico, completely private, just you. As you get closer, feel the weather changing, maybe more sunshine, gentle breeze. And when you see the perfect beach, just imagine how it would feel. Like a superhero that can fly, just touching down. And the moment you touch down on the sand, imagine you're wearing whatever clothing is appropriate to be on a beach. And you can hear the gentle breaking of the waves. You can feel the sun on your skin. And just imagine the most comfortable, relaxing sun lounger. Maybe it has a towel or a blanket over the lounger. I want you to imagine next to the lounger is a small table. I want you to picture a colourful cocktail. But this isn't an alcoholic cocktail, this is a cocktail of resources. Each colour in the cocktail represents a different resource that would be useful for you. Confidence, courage, a sense of certainty, trust that you have the resources needed to deal with any situation. So imagine how you would feel resting on that sun lounger, taking a sip of that cocktail of resources with whatever flavors. Maybe it's a chilled drink, feeling a sense of refreshing resourcefulness as you feel even deeper relaxed. In fact, I'm going to count from 5 to 1, and with each descending number, you're going to focus on that cocktail of resourcefulness starting to take effect. Seeing perhaps the line of the horizon where the sea meets the sky, blue skies, fluffy white clouds, the sun on your skin melting away any remaining anxiety. You feel a wonderful feeling of deep relaxation. Breathing in and breathing out. That's it, 5, deeper and deeper relax, releasing any tension in the muscles in your face, jaw, forehead, even around the mouth and nostrils. That's it, just releasing that tension now. That's it, 4, just releasing any tension around your neck and your shoulders. Imagine any tension in your shoulders melting like an ice cream under the sunshine. Just melt away all that tension. Feels so good to just release that tension now. That's it. And then 3, just feel like your limbs, your arms, your legs, releasing any tension that you don't need. Just feel limp, loose, heavy. There on that lounger. There on that beach. Feeling deeply relaxed. And then 2, imagine all of your internal organs relaxed, but in particular, your gut. If your neck and shoulders are the bank account of stress, then your gut is the bank account of anxiety. And right here, right now, we don't need any. So just feel that all those tiny muscles there in your gut can just release and relax. And it feels so wonderful to let go of that anxiety. Feel it melting away. And notice how you can breathe deeper than you did before. You can feel more relaxed, more comfortable. And then 1, feel a wave of relaxation from the top of your head to the tips of your toes, up and down to the tips of your fingers. Feel a wave of relaxation all over your body, feeling so relaxed. It's like you're sinking into that lounger. But you're not going to sleep. I want you to imagine right next to that cocktail of resources, take one more sip, is a book. But this isn't a fiction book or a non-fiction book. This is a book about someone that was able to create feelings of anxiety. I want you to imagine flicking through the pages and doing what many people do when they flick through pages of a book. They get lost in a story. They're no longer in reality. They become a character in a story. And I want you to imagine how it would feel to play a character in a story that is filled with anxiety because of the thoughts and evaluations that they were making. It reaches a point where you can't even hear the sea anymore because you are now in the book. You are the character in the book. A character living with hypervigilance, living with extreme levels of anxiety, but not because you live in an unsafe world, surrounded by threats and danger. But imagine you're a character that lives a safe existence, thinking about danger, thinking about threats. And it's the thoughts of threats and danger that influence physiological responses like posture and breathing rate. That it's possible by thinking about the possibility of bad things happening, that one domino hits another domino, hits another domino, until a chain reaction takes place to have feelings much like panic. Remember, this isn't you, it's just a character in a book. But imagine the character in the book does this frequently. If they're flying, if they're on their own, if they're traveling, if they're staying in their own house late at night, rather than making the evaluation that they are safe and relaxed, they might make an evaluation that there are threats and dangers, things to think about and worry about. Every time they check an alarm, lock a door, it gives more evidence that there's a real threat. This isn't you, it's just a character in a book, but I want you to imagine if you were that character in a book, it could be easy to create high levels of anxiety. And the next day when the anxiety goes, rather than making the evaluation that the threat wasn't real, instead you could make the evaluation that you had a lucky escape, that this time nothing bad happened, but only because you were vigilant, only because you were worrying so much, that your vigilance and worrying is exactly what kept you safe. I want you to imagine that in history, entire cultures, villages, always had a threat. Maybe a dragon, maybe some god or evil entity, kept people worrying and scared because it enabled them to be influenced more easily. Throughout history, people are more motivated by fear and danger than aspirational motivation. And I wonder, in this story, if you could be the brave villager that says, I don't believe there's a dragon. I don't believe there is an evil entity wishing me harm. It would take courage to defy the village and say, we've never seen the dragon. So breathe in and breathe out and entertain the idea that many of the threats and evaluations that you've been making are just as real as a dragon in an ancient village. And maybe all along you were just lucky enough to avoid the dragon. But the dragon may come back in the future and you might not be so lucky. Or you could make a different evaluation, that either the dragon isn't real, or that you could slay the dragon if it ever appears. Either way, you would feel more resourceful and confident than living a life always in fear of a dragon that may not even exist. Remember, you're just a character in a story, living with anxiety. But in this story, there's a way out. As you breathe in and breathe out, imagine you're a character in a story, open to new ways of thinking. New ways of thinking that may reduce the amount of anxiety you experience in the future. I want you to understand that anxiety is created. It's not inherent. And if it's created, then it has ingredients. And maybe some of those ingredients are thoughts, posture, breathing, even inner dialogue and what-if questions. And what if you could change them so you feel less anxiety and more resourceful? And maybe your inner dialogue is one of those ingredients. So imagine that panicked, anxious inner dialogue gently shifting to a more soothing, reassuring tone. The tone shifts and so do your feelings. And those what-if questions, when they do arise, instead of assuming that the what-if is a credible possibility, I want you to start to doubt the probability of these what-if statements. So instead of going down the rabbit hole and acting as if those what-if probabilities are true, just to yourself, you could respond with, let's see, let's find out. Have that tonality of curiosity and doubt to see if the dragon ever appears. And maybe it never does. Allow your mind to invite curiosity rather than fear. Fear can be an acronym. FEAR, false evidence appearing real. How many times have you acted as if that false evidence was real, even when nothing ever happened? So breathe in and breathe out, still in your story. Remind yourself that most of the time, the perceived threat is far less likely than your anxious mind suggests. And when you do feel anxiety creeping in, what if you were to calmly tell yourself, "I'll be fine," reinforcing your perception and ability to handle any situation? Your physical awareness increases, particularly when you're anxious, as you become aware of your posture and breathing, realizing that you can adjust them to reflect calmness and control. When you're anxious, people typically breathe rapidly from their chest. So by breathing slowly from the diaphragm, don't be surprised if that anxiety gets lower and more manageable until it doesn't exist at all. And if your mind was to jump to undesirable outcomes, take a breath, pause, and assess just how realistic these scenarios are. You have an anxious part of your mind and you have an analytical part of your mind. You could ask yourself, what's the percentage probability that that will happen? And maybe it's low. In which case you could follow that with, "I think I'll be okay." And in those moments that the toothpaste does get too far out of the tube, you could feel motivated to journal your anxious moments. Maybe on paper, maybe on video, maybe record audio, helping your unconscious mind learn and adjust from past reactions. And when you record it, you can reflect on it. After each anxious episode, provide feedback to your unconscious, helping it distinguish between probable or likely threats and just rare possibilities. And I wonder how often you've acted as if rare possibilities are like credible, highly probable, imminent threats, when they never were. And I wonder, how many false alarms will it take before you decide not to trust the alarm? Foster a belief in your safety and security, knowing that your environment is generally safe and supportive. But also acknowledge your inner strength and resilience, knowing that you have successfully navigated through many challenges before, and you've been fine and are fine. You can predict in a calm way, and you can predict calm outcomes or positive outcomes instead of catastrophes, allowing your mind to settle in a state of peace and relaxation as you direct your attention to positive, comforting realities of your life, diminishing the focus on potential threats. You have the ability to reframe anxiety as a signal, not a sentence, as just information rather than an alarm. Use it to assess rather than react. It's just a source of information. I want you to think about emails that you receive that are spam emails, uninvited, or even phishing attacks, giving you untrue information, hoping to provoke you into a response. I want you to start to assess that these internal worries are like phishing attacks, trying to provoke you into a state of anxiety when the underlying message is not true and not useful. So breathe in and breathe out and realize that you can engage in mindfulness to stay present. Anxiety is anticipating a future event. You can't be in the future and the present at the same time. So as you focus on what's actually happening in the present moment, you move away from the future into the present, into a feeling of resourcefulness, objectivity, and calmness. Because you have the ability to identify and challenge cognitive distortions that fuel your anxiety. These exaggerations, catastrophes, tiny possibilities expanded to feel like imminent threats can be replaced with far more likely, probable, and realistic thoughts. Start to realize that you have control over your reaction to anxiety, empowering you to respond differently. Each and every time you do it, you're training your mind and your body to respond differently in the future. As you start to feel that the sensitivity levels on your anxiety are too high, imagine going into the control room of your mind and just turning down the dial of that sensitivity. You want to feel anxious when there are imminent, credible, probable threats, not just low possibilities of something bad happening. That is no longer sufficient for you to be anxious. Imagine a future moment, perhaps traveling alone, or being alone in a house, but I want you to see that future version of you in a state of calm and peace. I want you to see that that has become your mind's default state. Rather than assuming the worst, you assume the best, unless there is compelling evidence to the contrary. Anxiety is created, not triggered. As you believe in your ability to change the pattern of your anxiety, you change the ingredients, you change the emotional state, and you can feel empowered by every step you take towards calmness. Feel the pages turning of the book as the book comes to its end. And I want you to imagine seeing that the main character in this story has started to believe that the dragon never existed, and that if it ever did exist, they would have the resources necessary to slay the dragon. I want you to see a story of someone that used to live in fear to instead being their own hero. As you feel the final page of the book close, place the book down by your side. Take the final sip of that cocktail of resourcefulness, feeling all of the wonderful qualities existing within you. And then allow yourself to float up into the sky and make your way over oceans and mountains, cities and skylines, all the way back to your present, back inside your own room, seeing yourself relaxed and comfortable, and then place yourself inside yourself so your conscious and unconscious are now synchronized once again. But taking all of these new thoughts, ideas, and resources with you, here in the present, take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your nose. Wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes, connect fully in the present moment as I now count from 1 to 10 to awaken you. Starting to count 1, 2, 3, waking up, 4, 5, 6, more alert, 7, 8, open your eyes, 9, 10, wide awake, wide awake, wide awake.
Thank you for listening to The Hypnotist with Adam Cox, the show that gives you inside access to cutting-edge hypnosis with real clients facing genuine issues. To automatically receive the latest episodes, please subscribe. If you'd like to support the show, please share this episode with just one friend you think it could help. And if this episode helped you, please leave us a 5-star review.